You remember the time I went yabby fishing, don't you? You know, it's terribly easy. All you need to find is a quiet, stagnant pool miles away from the pub, a dear friend with whom you can philosophise, an interested-looking koala, a lamb chop to entice the elusive but succulent yabby to take hold of, and, of course, lots of patience. Yabbies, or freshwater crayfish, écrevisses in France, and crawfish in the southern states of America, are brilliant things. And in one of Melbourne's top restaurants, run by Stephanie Alexander, they're the star of the menu. This is how she cooks them.
Well, I'm just going to simply roast them, and I think that there's very little you can do to improve on the natural yabby. So the only secret is lots of heat. Lots of heat, very hot pan, and a bit of olive oil, a bit of thyme, and then that's it, all there is to it. Very, very hot. We just simply put them in. Not too crowded, because we don't want to take the heat away from the pan, so that's probably as many as will safely fit. A bit of thyme, because it's just sort of, once the heat is on the thyme, it releases all the lovely flavour. Liberal olive oil. It's starting already. Stand clear. You put them in the oven for about 8 minutes, and then that's it.
Well, that'll be in the oven for about 8 minutes, Bruce, altogether, and when you see it again, it'll be prepared further. But this is what pleased me when this came whistling under my nose. This is some couscous and what, lamb shank?
Lamb shank.
Baked pumpkin and roasted eggplant or aubergine, and with some salted lemon.
All cooked in the manner of Moroccan sort of tagine, but using really very simple ingredients which come together very nicely, I think.
You know, it's not often you get a chance to eat on these programs. You're so busy cooking or talking about food that when you want to eat, the restaurants are shut or you don't feel like it. So when you see a little wholesome, friendly dish like this, you just have a really good munch at it.
Oh. Do be careful. Hot and heavy. Hot and heavy.
There we are, Stephanie.
Fantastic. Now, as you can see, they're perfectly beautiful to look at just like that, but pretty hard for anyone to eat because they've got their best clothes on when they come here. So we have to split them in half for them, and that's what I'm going to do now.
But these weren't always the sort of crustacea you'd find on an expensive, or not an expensive, a fine dining restaurant.
No. I think we have had a problem in this country that people have tended to despise what was readily available, and children used to cook these and boil them up in what we call a kerosene tin, which presumably you call a paraffin can, or tin, I suppose, and just eat them on the kitchen table. So to bring them into a smart restaurant is different, but most people absolutely love them.
So what's the next phase on...
So what I do with these now is just stick a little bit of thyme, extra thyme over the top, just an extra, and then we've got a choice. You can either use chilli or pepper.
Well, let's use the chilli.
Let's use the chilli.
Can we?
Right, we certainly can. This is just chilli in a titch of vinegar.
Fresh chilli.
Fresh chilli, chopped up with a little tiny touch of vinegar, just so that it goes on more easily. That's really why I do it. And then a little bit more olive oil.
Oh, can I use this little... I think this is a beautiful
one,
thing.
Isn't it?
Absolutely superb.
Lovely. And that, of course, is a very beautiful extra virgin olive oil, which, of course, is a seasoning and better than most sauces.
Sure.
Certainly for seafood. And then I just put that back on the stove for about half a minute,
right,
and they're absolutely ready.
Brilliant.
Perhaps a squeeze of lemon.
Oh, some of those here. This wine's pretty stunning too, isn't it? This is from the region here? That's
from the Yarra Valley, which is becoming very well known for quality wines, particularly elegant reds.
Grand.
I love it when they sizzle and hiss like this, and you know that they're giving you a message that it's all ready to go.
They're feeling happy.
They are feeling happy. They've died in a good cause. Okay, now that is it.
Well, let's taste them.
So we can just either taste them from the pan. I can just fish you out you'd like to fish out your own, select your yabby.
Select my yabby.
I hope we haven't put too much chilli so that we don't burn our little mouths out.
Yes, our poor little mouths. Oh, it's too hot. Eek.
Fantastic thing.
Oh, beautiful, aren't they? And the thyme has come through, the olive oil is there, a little bit of the chilli. Absolutely fabulous.
Beautiful. Australia, of course, is now exporting vast numbers of these things to Europe because of the overfishing of ecrevis in northern Europe. Watch it. Watch the silk shirt.
Well, I've got my rough one on today. Where's it going now, though? I mean, we've seen where it's been coming from, little by little, as I'm chomping around Australia, beginning to get the drift of the whole thing. But where's Australian food going to end up? Is it going to sort of mix down into an Australian cuisine?
No, I don't think so. I think Australian cuisine, and it's a word I try to avoid because it's French, is going to be the sum of its parts. And the sum of the parts are very varied. I think it's erroneous to suggest that all cooks in Australia are going to cook with Asian influence, because if you live in Alice Springs, you do not have access to Asian ingredients. In Melbourne, I do, so I use lemongrass and coriander, etc., etc., etc. But I am very sensitive to where I am and what's growing, and if I go to Alice Springs, I'm sure I'd find something there that I'd like to use, which I can't use in Melbourne. And that's what makes it interesting.
If you weren't a cook, what would you like to be?
Well, I also write, and I think that if I weren't a cook, I'd be spending more time writing. I keep thinking I should write the great novel that combines food and sex and make $1 million or something. I don't think
we are looking for an heiress, and we haven't exactly said what, that sounds very interesting.
Yeah, well, I do like the writing part, but the cooking leaves very little time.
Blessed are the cheesemakers. Words immortalised by Monty Python to introduce my friend Richard Thomas.
Start with an old and ugly one. I'm noted for being the cheesemaker who's uglier only than his cheese. That is what I call a Miller White. It's inspired originally by Gorgonzola cheese, but the mould didn't work out when we brought the recipe back to Australia, if you like. So we've ended up with a cheese that has very little blue mould in it, but has wonderful texture and quite a complex flavour about it.
Oh, yeah. Reminds
me that?
I do like that. It reminds me of a French blue cheese I tasted in the monastery once. That's very creamy, and I like the blue bit behind it, although there's not a lot of it, is very nice.
The idea, well, in the first instance, Australians had an experience with Danish, very sharp, crushed ant flavour, and they nowadays want something a little milder with a bit wider appeal. So I tried that one. Now, we're going to open this fellow up, and it's going to be as much of a surprise for me as it is for you, Keith, because I haven't seen inside this bloke. Well, this is a white, a much younger and moister one, so let's cut a piece out of him.
Oh, look at that.
And all, that's wine yeast actually growing in there. All of that has a lot of influence on the flavour inside the cheese, of
course.
It
seems odd to me in this macho country that a man could be so occupied with making something like cheeses.
It's lonely when you're trying to do something that nobody really understands at this stage. I mean, there are cheeses here that I have no problem feeling confident and happy about with someone like yourself, but when I try them out on somebody who's never been to Europe and though they're really wanting to try and understand what you're doing, it just can't happen because there's an odour there that comes between them. And Australians are very sensitive about odour. We spend huge amounts of money deodorising our bodies and overlaying it with perfumes and other things to take away the kinds of animal, if you like, smells that are coming from these cheeses. I think
it is true what they say. Blessed are the cheesemakers. We've covered thousands of miles in this little gastronomic pilgrimage, and I can honestly say that Australia doesn't, as far as I'm concerned anyhow, have a national dish. No Irish stew, no roast beef and Yorkshire pudding, but that's no bad thing. It does have Maggie Beer's Pheasant Farm restaurant. She's just putting a few tots of gin and some juniper berries over these plump little beauties before whacking them into a hot oven for about 40 minutes or so. She's had the place for about 11 years. She's self-taught and wonderfully successful, especially amongst the local winemakers who sometimes turn a lunch into supper. Anyway, it's time for me to do a spot of cooking, so I borrowed the kitchen. Bruce, down to the business here. Ingredients: pheasant stock, butter, freshly homemade pasta, pickled quinces, not pickled quinces actually, quinces cooked in sugar, wild mushrooms, little baby beetroots, and then some shallots, garlic, fresh black pepper, crushed juniper berries, and thyme, and a little thyme for a little wine. I said all of that with my mouth full. It's quite clever, really, wasn't it? Anyway, stay there, because I've got one of Maggie's little pheasants nicely browned off in butter there. Plump little thing, isn't it? So we'll put that into this roasting tray, breast down. Around that, I'm going to place these lovely little parboiled beets, because we're going to roast the pheasant with beetroot and make a sauce later for some hungry wine growers. Right, that goes into the oven. We all know what ovens look like, but it's got to go in just the same. This is a very upmarket caterer's oven. It only takes about 12 minutes in there. For you at home, you could reckon on 35 minutes at least to prepare this dish. Right, fire up the gas. Stay on the pot there, Bruce. Thank you very much. Bit of butter into there. And my fundamental ingredients: some garlic, some shallots. So that's sizzling. There's my wooden spoon. Right, and recall that in the bottom of this little saucepan here, this frying pan, I've got the juices from the pheasant. I've got some old block Shiraz, which is a lovely red wine, to go in there to do what we call deglace the pan. That's just to get it, Bruce, just a minute. Bruce, sorry, I know you've been having a busy morning. That's to get all the juices out of the pheasant, to mix with the wine, to give me a super sauce with my pheasant when it's roasted. Okay, right, close back on that for a second. Thank you. That's sufficiently reduced. It's not quite reduced enough. A second or two of that. I'll now put in my pheasant stock. Let that bubble away for as long as it takes, which will be about 5 minutes or something like that. Also, you add some juniper berries, crushed, a little bit of fresh thyme, and some black peppercorns, crushed as well. That just flavors and enriches this sauce. Right, then, stay with me, my dear. Where's my cloth? That's absolutely fine. Have a good close-up of that. That's just how the sauce should be at this stage, okay? Fine. Back again, Bruce, please, because I am actually trying to cook this damn thing. Strain the sauce into there. So we've got no bits in it. Then into that pan with some butter again. And these little mushrooms. Just to sizzle those a little bit, just to get them slightly softened in the butter. And then pour the sauce back in again. And this butter that's in with the mushrooms will help to thicken this sauce most magnificently to pour over my dish. There we are. It's a kind of Barossa Valley wild mushroom sauce, very much as you'd find in Alsace. Strangely enough, this area reminds me of a little bit. Yummy. Right, close up on that, because the next time we see it, it will be on the big serving dish. It goes without saying it was absolutely delicious, of course. And in the company of some of the Barossa Valley's most accomplished winemakers, I asked Maggie what Australian cuisine is really about. Is there an Australian cooking?
Yes, there is. There is, in a sense. I mean, we've got indigenous products that, other people haven't, like our kangaroo, emu, all those sort of things, crocodile. But it tends to be a little bit faddish. We haven't had anyone telling us what not to do. And so we've just developed, with the products we have, a really simple, clean sort of cuisine. And the Asian influence and the Italian and Greek influence have been very strong. Cities have gone very much for the Asian influence. I feel too much. I'm a chili wimp. I can't stand chili. And in the city, everyone wants to do chili with everything. But they'll calm down. That'll sort of go away. But I don't think, we don't have a cultural peasant base, so we can't have a cuisine in the same way as your European cuisine. But I think it's a truly fresh and individual cuisine.
This is the view from my luxurious hotel room at the Regent in Sydney. where they have a particularly brilliant chef called Serge Dansereau, and I asked him to create a dish that would celebrate Australian cookery. He lightly fried some succulent scallops so they were slightly underdone and juicy. Then onto wontons, that's a sort of Chinese ravioli. He places the scallops, some diced and fried Chinese mushrooms, added some fresh coriander, stuck another layer of pasta with milk over the top, and cut them out with a pastry cutter. Then into fish stock he adds a cup of wine vinegar. The stock is made in the usual way by reducing the heads and bones. Then he adds some soy sauce, and for that extra oriental pizzazz, some sweet soy sauce. Then in a piping hot pan, he's quickly sauteing some stalks of choy sum. That's a Chinese vegetable similar to chard. Yum yum. They're cooked in seconds, of course. Now he adds some cold butter to thicken the reduced sauce made from the fish stock, white wine vinegar and soy sauce. Okay so far? And into boiling water he puts the little envelopes of scallops and mushrooms for 2 minutes until the pasta is cooked. He serves it with the thickened sauce and the wontons surrounded by the lightly cooked and crisp choy sum. Et voilà.
Excuse me, I know I shouldn't speak with my mouth full. That is quite delicious. That is French, that is Chinese, that is Australia on a plate for Serge. Serge, that's brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Can I have some more? Mine?
No, go ahead.
Thank you.
Without a shadow of doubt, the strongest influence on Australian cooking comes from the Orient, which is not surprising it's only up the road in the manner of speaking. Like Serge, many young chefs are mixing established French methods with Thai and Chinese ingredients, creating something I think quite new and definitely worth trying, like Chinoise in Melbourne, run by Kevin Donovan.
When the Chinese migrated out of mainland China to Southeast Asia and the Malaysian Peninsula, they began to use their own cooking techniques, but applying it to ingredients they found in Malaysia. They're often called the Straits-born Chinese or the Peranakan or Nonya, the Nonya people. Using those spices, cumin, turmeric, and applying them to prawns in marination with a bit of coconut milk, then cooking them on the char grill to get, once again, that beautiful light texture and that light style.
So, being a gastronomic detective, I asked those nice people from Qantas to fly me to Singapore, and don't spare the horses, which, following on from what Kevin was saying, is where East meets West in a wonderful melting pot. The smell of curry spices alone in the Indian Quarter is worth the plane ticket. It's like a sort of gastronomic theatre with chefs cooking enormous crepes like you see in Brittany. The Bretons are Celts, and the Celts thousands of years ago were supposed to have originated near India, so perhaps it's a gastronomic legacy. Just a few rambling thoughts from a cook fascinated by history. But the signature dish of Singapore has to be chili crabs eaten with fresh bread dunked in spicy chili sauce. It's a family and friends dish where everybody gets very messy, but the taste is superb. The crabs are cooked very quickly in piping hot sesame oil with fresh chili. The juice of the crabs is then thickened with tomato paste and corn flour, and the dish is complete in less than 4 minutes. And it's terrific. And so is this.
Very occasionally on these programs I take a morsel of something, I eat it, and I go, that's delicious. And sometimes I don't really mean it. Sometimes I'm fibbing. But here, I can say that this curried fish head stew down here, Bruce, is absolutely magnificent. The whole fish head, succulent flesh on it, okra, wonderful spices, little meat curry too, cabbage, curried cabbage, poppadoms, yogurt drink which is called lassi, really, really good with the hot curry. And I know I'm sometimes known as a heavy drinker in this business, but here I am. I've got them all stacked up here, my fresh lemon juices, because with this kind of food, it's so spicy and so tingling, makes you really feel good. You don't need booze of any kind, just something refreshing to drink with it. I reckon, you know, this could really catch on. You could see it, couldn't you, in Stoke Poges and Maidenhead and places like that. New fish head curry takeaways opening up all over Britain. It'd be absolutely wonderful. It's a damn sight better than a hamburger, I'll tell you that.
be perfectly honest with you, that Singapore's city fathers might just have gone over the top with their high-rising concrete factor, but underneath these enormous buildings are some brilliant markets bursting with fresh vegetables and smelling of spices and fish. Everything comes from the small farms every day. Choy sum and pak choy, beans and peppers, Chinese cabbage, in fact, the whole 9 yards. But the fish is truly amazing. This ugly specimen is a sea cucumber. I'm told it's stir-fried, but I'd hate to see one swimming around. And these little beauties, fabulous little shrimps, fresh as daisies and as sweet as Somerset cob nuts. Yum, yum. And here's someone beating the living daylights with a luckless catfish. You won't see that in the middle of Tesco's. But I love markets. To me, they're like watching a brilliant film full of surprising images and colours and strange textures. And they give one such an appetite. Singapore at night smells of satay. Those little kebabs, char-grilled and served with a peanut sauce. You can eat a couple of dozen and still feel hungry. Everybody comes to the food markets at night to eat, and not surprising as it's cheap and fresh, and the influences come from all over the Far East. Now this little spicy Singapore noodle's in the making, a delicious combination of fresh prawns and chilli. I do wish, though, now that the weather's changing, we could have these open-air food markets back in the UK, with Vietnamese, Italian, Indian, and Cantonese, in short, the whole enchilada. Ah, now this is really good and refreshing, crushed sugarcane. But what to eat? My last meal before getting back onto the big silver bird to take me to Devon. Shall it be satay, or a nice vindaloo, or maybe a steamed sea bass, or maybe, why not my favourite of all things?
Thank you very much indeed. You know, it's been a very, very long shoot. It's been 12 weeks on the road, and I've had everything from marrons to oysters, from tuna fish to barracuda, barramundi, best steak, best salmon, best stuff. But I haven't ever really chosen myself precisely what I would like to eat. And on my little stopover, on my way back to England, the most fabulous mini break from Australia to Singapore, back to England, at last I have my favourite meal. Noodles, Singapore noodles, pork, pak choy, chopsticks, and no more television crews, because I will enjoy myself.
So, this is where I take my leave. But before I finally depart, a few unscheduled moments from my brilliant cook's tour through Oz.
I think I've never tasted wine in a more exotic location than rocking around on the boat down under on the Great Barrier Reef.
There you can see all that. You can eat all that.
Yeah, it's all full of insects.
Yeah.
Oh, shit, Jesus, you can't eat that. Gross. Oh.
So, we've had, I don't know what we've had. I feel sick. We had an absolutely splendid day out on the river today. The Derwent, what's it called? Oh, no, what do I think of things like that? Some Drysdale, isn't it? But how do you end up? The most fabulous week in South Australia is with the specialty, as we say in America, of Adelaide. It's a pie floater. Can we start again? It's Australia. Not very good. Do that. That's fine. Where's the gear shift? I don't like making cheap jokes like that, but horses absolutely petrify me. They really do. Right, and shift the list for my new chums, Ian and Anne, who play Harold and...
Natch.
My very new chums, Ian and Sue, who play Harold and Madge in Neighbours. They're absolutely, I got it right.
No, you didn't.
Oh, no, you
What did I do wrong that time?
You said Ian and Sue.
Ian and Anne, I'm hopeless at it. They say that Melbourne has the largest Greek population outside Athens in the whole world, so it's only logical that we should stop off at a Greek restaurant and do a simple, typical Greek dish. We're doing it here in Stavros' restaurant in Melbourne. What we're going to cook is mefia me...
Okay, fine.
Why can't I pointedly look at it?
Well, pointedly look at it then.
There. I was just making myself a little anchovy butter because I don't know many ways to cook tuna fish, and to me it's a Mediterranean dish, or even though we're in the deepest, darkest, wherever we are, I've forgotten for the second. Australia, isn't it? Yes. So, we've been all together several days in the bush. We've been barramundi fishing, we've been out in the desert, we've been all over the place. Sorry, I have to start again. Oh, Jesus. Sure, this is just our luck, isn't it? In Hobart, we lit a fire, we lit a thing in our hotel room and the sprinklers happened. Here in the middle of the goddamn countryside, I set a barbecue and we've clearly set off the anti-barbecue alarms. Actually not, there's one over there as well. I see, they're just sprinkling their little lawns. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That sort of thing is destined to happen to me in Australia.
That's slow, okay? Just slowly move. You'll move. All right?
They don't seem to realize I was trying to swim back home. That's why I was going so fast. There's much more to being a cook than meets the eye, you know. What do you think of it then, Heidi?
It's very nice, thank you.
You leave it in.
Quite ridiculous. The Australian fence, I thought they knew all about them, but can't you see? It's just too short. This doesn't go there, that won't go there. It's ridiculous.
Yes, it's awful hard being a Boy Scout. I can't close the sodding thing.
I knew you city people would be like this. There's only two things to do with a gate like that. One in one hand. There. Now what was wrong with that?
Nothing at all.
No, didn't think there was. Then you find a little clip here. Simple. You'll learn, mate. You've been long enough with me, you'll be right. Now get in that car.
And Bruce, back up to me. One final thing. Why, oh why, oh why? Throughout the world, in England and Europe and America.